Welcome back to Donington Park, everybody. We've got our final Finecut Radical UK Championship race coming up for you. We've had 2 sprint races, one yesterday, one today. Both of those have been won by Marcus Littlewood, but this is the 50-minute race with a mandatory pit stop slap bang in the middle of it. There'll be 2 formation laps, I gather, for this one, probably as a result of some coolant or oil that was dropped in a previous race that our marshals have treated. You can also see there's a few little specks of gravel around the circuit because it's been a busy day here at Donington Park. So this is a 50-minute race. We can guide you through the grid shortly. Let me just tell you a little bit about the way the pit stop window works first, though. We've got no succession seconds to worry about because it's the first pit stop race of the season. But for the pit stops, after 25 minutes of racing, a pit window open sign is displayed at the start-finish line to the first car and remains displayed for a full lap so that everybody can see it. After passing the board on the track, at that point then the competitors can come into the pit lane to make their mandatory pit stop, and the pit stop must be made within a time period of 10 minutes, after which the pit window closed board goes out and then you have to have completed your pit stop. The mandatory pit stop is timed from pit in to pit out and must be a minimum of 45 seconds plus the time to pass through the pit lane complying with the pit lane speed limit, and I know that's 18 seconds here at Donington Park. So in theory, from pit in, breaking the beam to pit in to breaking it pit out, 63 seconds should be the minimum for any car. Clear blue skies here now at Donington Park. It's still a bit blustery, but temperature's slowly been creeping up all day, and it doesn't quite feel as chilly as otherwise it had been doing. So the cars are being given a couple of formation laps to build the temperature into their control Hankook tyres. All of the cars I think we've got out there on the grid, with the sole exception of James Pinkerton's, the development car, will be running subtly different specification, but the rest are SR3 XXR cars. So let's guide you through the grid then for this third round of the championship. Marcus Littlewood, already twice a race winner this weekend, sits there on a pole position, and alongside is Hamish Forrest. On row 2 of the grid, it's the 2 drivers that are going to be vying over the lead in the Fangio Trophy for those aged 50 and over. It is Andy Lowe and John McLeod. Row 3 of the grid, it's Alex Fisher that lines up on the inside of the 3rd row of the grid, and he has Rachel Robertson for company. And row 4 of the grid, now these are the 2 cars that are in the team's championship shared drivers. Flame Auricola, granddaughter of Penty Auricola, a former Lombard RAC winner, is there on the inside of the 4th row of the grid, and for company it's number 33, which is Elixir Barrett. And then off the back of the grid should be James Pinkerton, who is in the development car, will not be scoring championship points. Unfortunately, Jack Yang, who we've seen good things from so far this weekend, has had to withdraw from this race meeting, so he is not present on the grid, I'm afraid to say. So the cars are on their 2nd formation lap, but the clock has already started ticking in reality, so the 50-minute allocation of time for these cars already starting to be eroded, and in reality it sort of means that, you know, we're safety car conditions, you could argue, for this lap, but it should still be a 2x2 restart rather than a normal safety car period. In the event of an incident when we restart, it'd be single file. This should be 2x2. So Marcus Littlewood, can he make it 3 out of 3 this weekend? We shall have to wait and see. The next 50 minutes or so will be able to tell us that one. Hamish Forrest went well in the 2nd race that we saw. He had problems in the 1st race earlier on yesterday, but went really well when we saw him out in the 2nd of the 2 sprint races that took place earlier today. What might he be able to do? And then could anybody else get involved as well? John McLeod's got plenty of radical racing experience, but he's been too busy embroiled in battles trying to keep himself in 3rd place in both of the races. But he has, I would say, of all of the drivers out there, been the busiest man so far this weekend, trying to keep everybody else at bay. We're about to find out, because the safety car is just bringing the pack up towards Goddard's corner now, and we will get this 3rd round of the 2025 Finecut Radical UK Championship underway. Finecut, the new title sponsors for 2025. We thank them for their support, and let's see how things unfold in this 3rd and final race of the weekend. Lights out on the Hyundai safety car, peels its way in towards the pit lane. The black and the Dayglow car is that of Marcus Littlewood. James Pinkerton does what he's done at the start of each race and come down the pit lane to do a pit lane start to stay out of the way of the main championship squabbles. Hamish Forrest is squeezing Marcus Littlewood up towards Redgate Corner, and he's going to have to brave it out around the outside, but then just manages to find a little bit of a gap between himself and John McLeod, so he can tuck in safely in second place. So Marcus Littlewood leads the pack from Hamish Forrest in second place. John McLeod's there in third. Andy Lowe is in fourth place, but had Rachel Robertson sniffing around to see whether she could squeeze her way through. Somebody runs a little bit wide coming out of the old hairpin. I think that was Andy Lowe that just dropped a Hankook wheel or tyre into the gravel trap there, but largely got away with it. And only now does James Pinkerton, like he's done all weekend in the development car, the man who's head of design and development for Radical, does he start the race. He's in a development car, he's not scoring points, he doesn't want to get involved in squabbling with the championship. He will catch them for sure, but he will take his time and quietly work his way past, I'm sure, without any issues. So in towards the braking area for the Roberts chicane. And there goes Rachel Robertson under pressure from Flame Auricola, the Finnish driver. So you can see the Scottish Saltire on the rear wing end plate of Rachel Robertson's car, the Finnish end plates. And we've had a change for the lead of Fangio Trophy there, as decisively Andy Lowe dived at the inside of John McLeod and stole the place away. So that is going to be a change for order there. They had a brilliant battle in the first of the sprint races yesterday, did John McLeod and Andy Lowe, and it always seemed that on the brakes at the Melbourne hairpin was where Andy Lowe had the advantage. So his orange car comes over the start finish line now and is running in third place. John McLeod in fourth place, Rachel Robertson fifth, Flame Auricola in sixth place, Alex Fisher in seventh, and Alexia Barrett I think completes the top eight at the moment, with James Pinkerton sitting there in ninth place. And 45 minutes of the allocation, 45 and a half still to go. Down through the old hairpin, Rachel Robertson closing in on the coattails of John McLeod. You can just see the car moving and squirming around under braking. She tried to get the car anchored up, and that's just a single gear change down there for the old hairpin. It might be called a hairpin, but it's a very quick corner to say the least. Carry a lot of speed into it, and as long as you hook up the apex, you can carry a good lot of speed out of it, as long as you don't run wide. It's one of the easy corners to run wide at here at Donington Park, and there are sensors on the outside of the circuit beyond the curb line which pick you up. If you run wide, you would pick up a time penalty. So in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's, still with Rachel Robertson looking to see if she can prise the door open on John McLeod and squeeze her way through. So there goes Andy Lowe, John McLeod, Rachel Robertson, Flame Auricola, Alex Fisher, Alexia Robert. And this is just allowing our race leader, which is Marcus Littlewood, and Hamish Forrest to escape a little bit of a locked break there from Andy Lowe as he came in towards Goddard's corner. And that compromised his exit and has allowed John McLeod to squeeze his way back through. So John McLeod back into the lead of the Fangio Trophy. And now Andy Lowe might lose two places for the price of one here, because Rachel Robertson wants to buy in and has managed to squeeze her way through. So that's two places lost. It was only a small mistake, wasn't it, from Andy Lowe? Just as he went in towards the braking area for Goddard, snatched that brake. Through goes John McLeod, through goes Rachel Robertson. And straight away, having lost two places, he's in danger of losing another place as well, because Flame Auricola is right there as well. So up towards the top section of the circuit, up at McLean's corner. John McLeod under pressure continually. He's had a really busy weekend as John McLeod. Andy Lowe trying to fight his way back up through the order after problems as well, and there's a little bit of smoke coming off the back of his car. I think he's got a puncture. Yes, he has, so that's why Andy Lowe's dropped down through the order. Started this lap in fourth, but he's picked up some sort of puncture, and he just needs to be careful how quickly he brings that car back in towards the pit lane, because the car's squirming around on him and it's the right rear that's gone down. So through goes Alex Fisher, a newbie to Radical Racing. Through also goes the car that started towards the tail end of the field, which is going to be Alexia Barrett. And Andy Lowe now, I think, has got the message that all is not well with his car, and you can see the tyre coming off the rim on that right hand side. And as long as he's careful bringing it back to the pit lane, he shouldn't cause too much bodywork damage to it. The team can bolt another tyre on and he should be good to go. But it's such a fine point, bringing a car back to the pit lane as quickly as you can so you lose the least time, but equally bring it back slowly enough so you don't rip all the bodywork apart and cause yourself bigger problems than otherwise you would have. So, down the pit lane, in towards the team which await, and 360 competition. Have a look around that side of the car, establish where the problem is, get the jack under it, get a new Hankook on it and send it back out hopefully, but time being lost all of the time, and this really plays into the hands of the other driver that's eligible for the Fangio Trophy, which is John McLeod. Now, they clearly weren't expecting him in the pit lane, so there must have been either no pit car radio in it or no radio communication. Maybe Andy hadn't quite worked out exactly what the problem was, but now team go to work. In the meantime, racing continues out on circuit with a good fight still going on for third place. Every time there's been a good fight for third place, John McLeod has been involved in it so far this weekend, and now he is trying to keep Rachel Robertson at bay. Rachel, who hasn't got a great deal of car racing experience, you can see the novice cross on the back of her car. Only really started kart racing, 3 years ago did Rachel, and graduated over to cars. As they head up towards the completion of the lap, up towards Redgate Corner goes the battle for first and second, and that's coming down actually the lead advantage. New fastest lap of the race for the car in second place. Hamish Forrest laps a tenth or so of a second quicker than the race leader, 1 minute 31.191 from him, brings the lead advantage down to less than 1.9 seconds. So it's Littlewood from Forrest, McLeod from Robertson, as they're on their fifth lap currently. Back out of the pit lane, good work done by 360 competition to minimise the amount of delayed time for Andy Robertson, but all of that delay has now dropped him off the lead lap, I'm afraid, and there's not a great deal of coming back from there. So through McLean's corner and up towards Coppice, John McLeod and Rachel Robertson. They had a good little fight in the second of the two sprint races. I think Marcus Littlewood has pretty much led almost exclusively every single lap we've had so far this weekend. Now, still a while to go before we get the pit window open. It only opens after 20 minutes of the race, so we've had the first 10. The 10 minutes time the board will go out, but just when we hit that point, it's not like in other championships and series that once you get to 20 minutes the pit window's open. No, that's when the board goes out. You still have to drive past the board and come in on the next lap. So that's the process for this one. Has been the case in the Radical Cup, or the Finecut Radical Cup as it's called for this year, for many a year indeed. Over the start finish line goes John McLeod. Rachel Robertson still shadowing him. 15th consecutive year of Radical racing for John McLeod. Rachel Robertson in her first weekend of racing, I think it is, in the Radicals, as they start to plunge their way downhill through the Craner curves. These two as close as they've been in the race so far. The squabble for first and second has just opened back up again a little bit, beyond 1.9 seconds, because now it's Marcus Littlewood, the race leader, that set the fastest lap of the race last time through. 1 minute 30.880, and arguably the fastest lap in this race is the best one to have, because it nets you 2 championship points. It's double points for the endurance race. It's not 40 points for a win, it's 80 points for a win, and it's an extra 2 championship points for pole position, 2 championship points for the fastest lap. So everything gets doubled for the pit stop races. So onto the brakes, through the Fogarty S's, try and straighten up the left and right flicks through the Fogarty S's as much as you possibly can, and that's by taking as much curb as you dare. There are tyre stacks, I think, on the inside of them, so there's only so much that you can take before you end up potentially damaging your car. And there's also some reasonably large sausage curbs that are metal that sit on the inside of the concrete red and white curbs there, which can on occasions just unsettle the car if you go over them too much. But there's nothing to choose at all between these two cars. John McLeod sets his best individual lap of the race that time through. He's about 0.4 of a second quicker than Rachel Robertson, so the amount of daylight has just opened up a shade between the pair of them on that lap, but they still remain in 3rd and 4th places respectively as they head down through the Craner curves yet again. And our race leader, Marcus Littlewood, has just popped in another fastest lap of the race. That time it's a 1 minute 30.437. So we're not quite into the 1 minute 29s that we were earlier on. In the second of the two sprint races, Hamish Robertson did a 1:29.715, and in racing terms, that's the quickest lap we've seen all weekend. So we're not quite there in this one as yet, as Rachel Robertson, having fallen behind John McLeod, not by much, but by an extra quarter of a car length, is now picking up the toe and is beginning to close up again. She was a 1/10 of a second quicker through the first sector. She's about 3/10 of a second quicker through the second sector, so everything she gave up on the previous lap, she's managed to whittle back down again this time through, and is pushing hard, Rachel Robertson. Similarly liveried car to Hamish Forrest, but Hamish's has the Union Jack flag on the side wing end plates rather than the Scottish Sol tyre, and also it's a black crash helmet, as you can see, for the number 95 car in the second Wirra Tools backed car that we've got on the grid this weekend. So black crash helmet, and it's a white crash helmet for Rachel Robertson. That's the easier way to tell the two of them apart at a distance if you can't see the rear wing end plates of them. So down through the Craner curves, the reigning Radical SR4 champion Marcus Littlewood at the wheel of his, if you notice it, left-hand drive SR3 XXR, leading the way in towards McLean's corner. 2.7 seconds, nearly 2 3/4 seconds is the lead advantage that he's managed to build up. Hamish Forrest in second place, just having to give second best to him at the moment in the second place car. John McLeod still fighting away with Rachel Robertson. Then it's going to be Flame Ricola. It's there in 5th place, ahead of Alex Fisher. Alicia Barrett is in 7th place, James Pinkerton 8th, and Andy Lowe, of course, is 9th, but is a lap off the lead following his call to the pits for a new Finecut tyre to be placed upon his car. Now in the 25-minute race we had yesterday, we managed to squeeze 14 laps out of it, so we could be good potentially to get double that out, but of course the clock started ticking when we went on our second formation lap last time through, so maybe 27, 28 laps if we stay green all of the way. We'll have to wait and see. It's slightly warmer ambient conditions maybe than we had yesterday, because it was sort of heading towards dusk yesterday, and the checkered flag actually went out a few minutes early, just a couple of minutes early, because we were getting to the point where it was pretty marginal on daylight. But of course clocks moved forward from Greenwich Mean Time to British Summer Time, so no such issues today. And it was cloudy yesterday, that was a problem. That was why the lux level dropped so quickly, whereas we're now bathed in beautiful blue skies here at Donington Park. Lead advantage still opening up all of the time. Andy Lowe trying to get at least one lap back on some cars, so he's trying to carve his way through and past Alicia Barrett here, but that will not be for position. That is purely to unlap himself from the car that is running in 7th place. So any chance of a result for Andy Lowe was pretty much gone as soon as he picked up the puncture and had to limp his way around the circuit. But it's still championship points, that's the main thing, so keep pushing on. You just never know what might happen and what problems might sadly befall your fellow competitors in front of you, so just keep driving as hard as you possibly can. And Andy Lowe's now into his 5th year of racing. He's not exactly rusty coming into this season as well, having competed in the Radical Gulf Cup over the winter out in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, amongst other circuits out there. Yas Marina, fantastic facility if you've ever been. Dubai was the first of those Formula 1 grade circuits almost to be built, or FIA spec circuits to be built in the Middle East, shortly followed by Yas Marina. And certainly probably would have been a lot warmer than it has been at Donington Park this weekend. So there's Andy just turning his way out of Goddard's. So he's got another car that he's now looking to try and catch, but again, frustratingly for him, it's not for position. He's the only car that is off the lead lap. Everybody else is still on the lead lap at the moment. Now 4th, 3rd and 4th, not much has changed since last time we picked up on it. John McLeod is still under pressure from Rachel Robertson, who is still asking a few questions of the very experienced John McLeod. John's been racing with sort of a Dayglow green livery for a good number of years now, somewhere emblazoned on his car. So number 14 car, easy to spot. Rachel Robertson bouncing over the curbs at the Fogarty S's, and actually gets a really good run coming out of the Fogarty S's, but again isn't quite close enough. Or is she? She has a quick little lunge up the inside, and John McLeod sees her coming, is going to give her room, and is going to try and run wheel to wheel up towards Goddard's, but Rachel Robertson just gets her nose ahead, heading in towards the braking area for Goddard's. Can John McLeod fight back? Yes, he can. Back up the inside of Rachel Robertson. We saw this, didn't we, in the sprint race earlier on, where Rachel grabbed the position from John McLeod and got herself up to third, only for a corner later to lose it again, and that's almost a replay of what we saw earlier on. She's not going to have another go though up towards Redgate corner, so the order still remains as was. If you'd have blinked, you'd never have known that they changed position and swapped back, but that's the way it is. Close racing in the Finecut Radical Cup. Down through the Craner curves, through the Melbourne hairpin. These two cars are the best part of 15 seconds down the road from the second place car of Hamish Forrest, who is now over 3 3/4 seconds down the road from Marcus Littlewood. So up towards Coppice corner, difficult entry to the corner because you just can't see where exactly the curb line is as you go into it. Down a gear, you pick up the first apex, but you're almost in the middle of the circuit when you get to the second apex of the corner, so you don't really notice this in some respects. And then just let the car run all the way out to the curb line and then move back over to grab as much speed as you can through the Fogarty S's. Be careful that you don't outbrake yourself down into the Melbourne hairpin. And well, Rachel Robertson, lots of confidence on the brakes, takes a slightly later apex to try and get on the power as early as she can, almost triangulating the corner. But the outcome is still that it's still John McLeod that's hanging on to third place. Next time they come over the start-finish line, the board should be out that says the pit window is open. It doesn't mean they can pit. Remember, they've got to drive past that board once it's displayed. So up towards the braking area at Redgate corner. Board should be displayed to our race leader next time through that the pit window is open. And then say there's a 10-minute period where the cars have to pit. So the pit window closes at the 30th minute. And even if you go over the start-finish line at 29 minutes and 59 seconds, then you can still pit next time round, even though it might be nearly 31 minutes of the race gone, because you haven't passed the pit close board. If you pass the pit close board, you're too late. As long as you come in without passing it, you're absolutely fine. And so it's the opposite way round. You have to pass it before you pit when the pit window opens. So there's James Pinkerton. He's from his pit lane start, starting to work himself onto the coattails of Andy Lowe. So he'll be conscious that it's the customers that he's now starting to approach. So he'll pick his time to squeeze his way through and past. Andy Lowe is trying to hunt down still Alex Fisher, who's at the wheel of the car that we've seen Adrian Hallmark race in his championship in the past. So onto the brakes, in towards the left and the right flicks at the Fogarty S's. James Pinkerton, a double former Radical champion himself. I think one of those championships came in the SR1s, didn't it? The other one was in the UK Championship, if memory serves me correctly. And Andy Lowe has almost now caught Alex Fisher, but remember, this is not for position again. Andy Lowe having lost that lap relative to everybody else when he came into the pits for the tyre change. So the board should be out this time through to say that the pit window is now open. Confirmation on the timing screen that I'm looking at from race control that cars are able to pit at the end of this lap. And are we going to see any early takers for this one? Well, certainly if you're on your own and pushing hard and there's no traffic you're likely to come up against, you may as well stay out there for a bit longer. Maybe for the likes of Rachel Robertson in fourth place, if she feels like she might be being held up by John McLeod. I mean, they're both lapping at a similar pace, but they're always within 0.4 of a second of each other or something like that. Then maybe she can pit and see whether she might be able to leapfrog John McLeod in the pit lane slightly. Everybody stops because it's the first pit stop race of the season for the same amount of time. Come next time out, when they're at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit on the 18th of May, which was when the pit stop race will be, then if you win your class, you pick up an extra 20 seconds in the pits for the next pit stop race, an extra 15 if you're second, 10 if you're third, and it's 5 extra seconds if you're fourth or fifth in your class. So that then varies the amount of pit stops that take place and or amount of time that you have to spend in the pit lane area. Andy Lowe lapped himself, so that's a lap he's got back from Alex Fisher, but as to say, that's not for position. And are we going to see any takers for the pits this time through? I don't think we are at the moment. Up towards Redgate Corner comes Flame Auricola. Say her grandfather won, what was the 1989 Lombard RAC Rally in a Mitsubishi Galant at the time. And Penty Auricola was one of the Flying Finns, as they were called, back in the 70s and 80s. British Rally champion he was back in 1979, but very sadly passed away. What, 2009 it was now, quite some time ago that we lost Penty. And the phrase was always coined when particularly he was going sideways in a car and pushing hard, that he was giving it plenty of Penty, was the phrase that was coined. But he really was a superstar. Raced in what is nowadays WRC from 1973, 52 years ago now, right the way up until 1990 we saw his events. First pit stopper comes in, so into the pit lane is our first of our pit stoppers, and that's the black crash helmets. That will tell me that it's Hamish Forrest that's in. So comes to a halt now, and remember, everybody has to remain stationary in reality for 45 seconds, and because then you have to drive down the pit lane from one end to the other, because you've got a loop of timing at one end of the pit lane and a loop of timing at the other, and if you drive from one end of the pit lane to the other at the pit lane speed limit and not any quicker or slower than it, that takes 18 seconds. So add the 18 seconds to the 45, pit into pit out should not be any quicker than 1 minute and 3 seconds. So solo driver in. We can see already that one of our Formula Woman drivers is ready, whether that be Natalie Neumann or Carla Villanueva. I don't know the crash helmets of the pair, rather than only having bumped into them for a chat in the paddock earlier on this weekend. But Hamish Forrest, the first of the pit stoppers, must be about to start to propel himself back down the pit lane. Yeah, and back on cue, just as I say it. There we go. The time has elapsed, and as he exits the pit lane, as long as he is back out of it no quicker than 63 seconds from when he entered it, that would be deemed as a good pit stop. Now, comes out of the pit lane, but can't quite hook up the gear in time, so he's a little bit slow on acceleration there. So that might have cost him a little bit of time. Now, Rachel Robertson has still not come in for her pit stop, but she is in full attack mode. And is she going to go back past John McLeod this time? Yeah, it was the good run coming out of the Fogarty S's that allowed it. Now, she's through into third place. Can she hang on to it this time through? Because last time she got up to third, John McLeod returned the favour with an overtake up at Goddard's Corner. But I don't think he's going to be able to this time. And now that she's there, John McLeod might be advised to dive for the pit lane if he wasn't going to, but they both come in. Right, okay, they both pit on the same lap. So in comes Rachel Robertson, in comes John McLeod. They'll both be stationary for 45 seconds. Now, is Rachel Robertson still going to be able to hang on to that place by the time they've completed their pit stops? Now, in theory, they should both come out nose to tail, with Rachel ahead of John McLeod, but we'll have to wait and see. Into the pit lane is the first of our pit stoppers for the team's championship, and that's Flame Auricola that's in. So she's ready to hand the car over to the Luxembourger, Natalie Neumann. Luxembourg, of course, in the German-French border. Fantastic city, fantastic country if you've never been. It really is so pretty. The Moselle Valley and the Moselle River. Luxembourg, Steinsel, some beautiful places to go and visit. Vianden in Luxembourg. So she's about to be bolted into the car. Lots of experience in autocross, less so in radicals. And John McLeod has leapfrogged ahead of Rachel Robertson in the pit stops. So as long as both of those pit stops are the right side of 63 seconds, all is good. But John McLeod has come out slightly ahead of Rachel Robertson. Now, I'm assuming Rachel Robertson's was just a slower stop and John McLeod's was good, because there's plenty of experience in the team to make sure that that happens. Andy Lowe trundling his way back down the pit lane. Natalie Neumann heading back out onto the pit lane. In the meantime, the race leader is in, which is Marcus Littlewood. So, who is that going to put into the lead at the moment? Probably James Pinkerton if he doesn't come in, actually, the man who started from the pits. So there goes John McLeod. Now, he came into the pit lane about 7/10 of a second behind Rachel Robertson. James Pinkerton does come in at the end of that lap, as does Alex Fisher. So that, I think, only means that Alexia Barrett has not been into the pit lane as yet at the wheel of the number 33 car. And Alexia Barrett is also in the pit lane as well. So that is everybody now that has either completed their pit stops or is in the process of completing their pit stops. Those 3 cars that sit there in the pit lane. So one is James Pinkerton. He's at the back of the train of the 3. Alexia Barrett is about to give way to Carla Villanueva, the Mexican driver. And at the front of the queue, it's the green car with a silver stripe down the centre of it, which is Alex Fisher. So that's all of the mandatory pit stops ticked off, with 21.5 minutes to go. And then, just having a quick look, Rachel Robertson came out of the pit lane 4.3 seconds adrift of John McLeod, considering that they came in together. So was that a short stop for John? Was that a slow stop for Rachel? Was it a combination of the two? I really don't know. So James Pinkerton back out onto circuit, which means that the pit lane is now rather empty, and the only car that needs to vacate it is Alexia Barrett, giving way to Carla Villanueva. So Carla Villanueva, a driver who more recently, when we saw Formula E visit Mexico City, she was the safety car driver out there in Mexico for Formula E. And these 4 drivers will be, I'm sure, focused on the Formula Women Nations Cup, which takes place out at Dubai Aerodrome and race circuit in May, where a whole range of female drivers come together. 38 women from 15 countries qualified back in December to be part of the Formula Women Nations Cup and gain fully funded entry into the Nations Cup event. Some of them that were successful out there in Dubai. So 20 minutes to go, which means that now the pit closed board will be out for our race leader next time through. We could see potentially a new fastest lap of the race coming in if Hamish Forrest can stitch things together, because he's just gone through the first sector of this lap and has gone through at an absolute best. Now the first sector brings the cars down the Wheatcroft Straight, which is what we're looking at the moment, through Redgate Corner, down through Hollywood until roughly part the way down the Craner Curves, just as it flips into the left-hander at the Craner Curves. Sector 2 of the lap brings you from the Craner Curves through the old hairpin, Starkey's Bridge, McLean's Coppice, until roughly where the Dunlop Bridge used to be. Part the way down the straight near the exhibition building, coming in towards the braking area for the Fogarty S's. That's Sector 2, and Sector 3 brings you from there to the rest of the lap. Well, Hamish Forrest, absolute best first sector, quicker than he's previously gone through the second sector, and he's in the third sector now, coming up to the final corner. And as long as he gets this one right, this could be another new fastest lap of the race this time through. He's a little way off the race leader, that being 11.6 seconds between the pair of them, but that was not far off the fastest lap of the race that we've seen. It's really the final sector where it all came undone for him. He didn't get a brilliant final sector. It was the best part of, I would say, about 6/10 slower through the final sector than he'd previously been, so might have just made a small mistake before we cut to him as he went either through the Fogarty S's, maybe a little bit slower than he'd previously done, or possibly in towards the Melbourne hairpin. The Melbourne hairpin. So didn't turn out to be quite the lap it was looking like it was going to be in the end, albeit it was still quicker than the race leader could manage. Not by much, but just by a few thousandths of a second. Our race leader, talking about him, heads with 18 minutes to go in towards the Fogarty S's. He's going to be starting lap number 20 before too much longer. I said we might get to sort of 27, 28 laps by the end of it. Well, I think we might actually surpass that slightly, because yesterday's race we did 14 laps in what was 25 minutes of allocation, I think. but actually the checkered flag came out after 22 3/4 minutes, so you could arguably say it should have been 15 laps, so it might even be 28 to 30 laps we could squeeze out of this one potentially, but there'll still be some traffic to deal with before too much longer, and that will be Natalie Neumann's car. Natalie, one of those that has qualified for the Nations Cup. She was 8th in the Nations Cup's qualifiers back in Dubai in December. So of the, what did I say, 38 women going out there, 8th quickest, so impressive stuff from Natalie Neumann. Don't really have any racetracks in Luxembourg at all. You've got the Goodyear testing facility, but that's a private track in Luxembourg. Other than that, you've got to cross the border, and Nürburgring's not that far away. That's probably about an hour and a half from Luxembourg City. Spa's not that far away either. That's a similar distance as well, but there's not many opportunities to race inside your country, or any at all really if you're based in Luxembourg. She moves out of harm's way, lets Marcus Littlewood, the reigning Radical SR4 champion, work his way through and past. And it's not taken a great deal of time for Marcus to get to grips, has it, with the extra power and the ever more efficient downforce of the Radical SR3 XXR. 720 kilograms is all they weigh, so it's a light and a nimble car. You're limited to the amount of tyres that you can utilise in any one weekend as well, so maximum of 6 tyres per event to see you through qualifying, 2 sprint races and an endurance race, and all of that is to try and keep the budgets down and affordable for the Finecut Radical Cup UK. And I've got to say, at the end of the day, no motorsport is cheap, let's face it, but if you want to go prototype racing and have that unbelievable sensation of downforce and corner speed, but also top end speed in these cars as well, in a very light and nimble car, then you wouldn't go far wrong looking at Radical. And the factory support from the factory at Peterborough, and of course the base that we have here nowadays at Donington Park, as always, help on hand. And it is a global brand. What's it, they built their 1000th Radical since the company was formed not so long ago, and it's not just domestically in the UK. You've got the Middle Eastern Championship, you've got the North American Championship, you've got Scandinavian Championships, Australia, I think out into the Far East as well. It is very much now a global brand. So here comes Hamish Forrest now. He's just about to place a lap on Natalie Neumann, and is decisive in doing so as he heads in towards the Fogarty S's, with a bit of help from Natalie just easing off the throttle and spotting him and letting him go. Doesn't want to get involved, wants to keep her nose clean in a first weekend of racing in the Finecut Radical Cup UK. Our race leader has now got a 10.5 second advantage. James Pinkerton has set the fastest lap of the race, by the way, in the development car, 1 minute 29.890, but he won't pick up any championship points for that one. So the extra 2 championship points for the fastest lap will still be heading in the direction of Marcus Littlewood, who last time through set his best lap of the race with a 1 minute 30.130. And that's still not quite down to the 1 minute 29s that we saw earlier on, but a 1 minute 30.130, just to give you an indication. That's an average speed if we want to work in kilometres per hour, taking into account all of the twiddly bits and the heavy braking area for the slow corners at the old hairpin, Melbourne hairpin and Goddard's. Average speed of 160 kilometres per hour, which is nearly 100 miles per hour as an average speed. 99.3 miles per hour is the average for something like that. So you think if that's averaging the speed out around the whole lap, then what are the cars, what's the VMAX of the car as it's heading down the straights? John McLeod trying to thread his way through and past Carla Villanueva. Safely deals with the Mexican driver. Her first experience of Donington Park. I was chatting to her yesterday. She did say, you know, she's done some work on the simulator, but she said it can't quite prepare you for just the way that the car loads up fully as you head down through the plunges of the Craner curves, which she'd say, yeah, I've spent some time on the sim. I want to get used to the handling of the car and the peculiarities of the Donington Park Grand Prix circuit. So a couple of sim sessions for her just to sort of build the confidence and actually know, which way to turn left or turn right, and the approximate braking points. The sims are all so good nowadays, so I'm sure the likes of Natalie Neumann and Flamer Rickler and Lichia Barrett have all done exactly the same, whether it be here at Donington Park or when we go next time out to Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit, at Snetterton the 300 circuit, Zandvoort, Silverstone, back here at Donington as well. Now, regardless of what sim software they're using, the vast majority of them, and all of them, will have those kinds of circuits on, so you can be familiar with the circuit before you ever physically see sight of it. So through the right-hander at Redgate Corner, Rachel Robertson is now pushing hard again. We saw her really having a good little battle with John McLeod pre-pit stop. Bearing in mind she lost time through the pit stop, she's now doing desperately hard to try and work her way back onto his coattails, and she's just about managed to do so. So those two are reforming their little squabble. I think we've got a 5-second time penalty for track limits heading in the direction of number 5, Alex Fisher. So he has gone beyond the white line painted around the circuit, or the red and white curbs, too many times. So he'll be picking up a 5-second penalty, is the information that's just reached me. With 11 and a half minutes to go. This battle for third place is fully formed again. First race of the weekend, John McLeod, third place, after a great fight with chops and changes in the order between himself and Andy Lowe. Second race of the weekend, the second sprint race, John McLeod, third place, after a brilliant fight with Rachel Robertson with chops and changes for places. And this race, John McLeod, third place, after another brilliant fight with Rachel Robertson, again with chops and changes for position. So he's been a busy man, as John McLeod, all weekend. Just over 10 minutes remain, so we're pretty much 4/5 through this race, and still haven't quite sorted out what's going to happen for third and fourth place. I think largely the rest of the positions are now sorted, because Marcus Littlewood has got 13.2 seconds advantage in the lead of the race between himself and Hamish Forrest, who's got 27.5 seconds in hand between himself and this squabble we're looking at now, John McLeod under pressure from Rachel Robertson. After these two, then next back is James Pinkerton in the factory development car, who's 10.5 seconds back, and even if he catches them, bearing in mind he's not championship scoring, he'll just ease off and just make sure they continue their brilliant little battle. Alex Fisher then is 35 seconds back from that, and of course has got a 5-second penalty to be added to that, so that'll make it 40 seconds in reality. And then I think still just about on the lead lap, or just about having gone off it, Natalie Neumann, and then Carla Villanueva. And of course, remember, Andy Lowe lost a chunk of time early doors and is still looking to see what he might be able to do. And he might not finish last, actually, because Andy Lowe is now on the same lap as Carla Villanueva and is about 3 seconds adrift of her. So his last lap time should allow him probably to overtake that car before too much longer. So John McLeod back over the start-finish line. Rachel Robertson trying to work out where she might be able to grasp the opportunity to squeeze her way back through. Every time she did it in the second of the two sprint races, the one we had earlier on today, and in this race, it's always been down under braking for the Melbourne hairpin. So let's wait and see as to whether that again is going to be her preferred overtaking spot. She gets a good run coming out of the old hairpin though, and is starting to close up. Through the left-hander at McLean's Corner. Still hardly a cloud in the sky here at Donington Park. It really is albeit a very breezy, but a beautiful afternoon. It does make you wonder also, because it is quite strong, the breeze, exactly how much this is affecting the cars. They'll be heading into a headwind at this point, so that will sort of slow the car down by maybe a kph or two, and you'll have a tailwind therefore that's pushing you down through the Craner curves, and that will surely affect the car as well, as it's pushing on the rear wing of the car. So it will be breezing. A side wind, for instance, as you turn in towards Coppice Corner and head, even through Schwantz Curve into McLean's, all of a sudden you go from a tailwind to a side wind. So I'm sure it will be just affecting the cars a little bit, not by huge amounts, but it's quite blustery on occasions. So over the start-finish line they'll come. 7 3/4 minutes to go. John McLeod still just ahead of Rachel Robertson. Second between the pair of them, give or take 27 thousandths. And John McLeod that time through pulled away by virtue of the fact that he just set his best individual lap of the race so far. That was a 1 minute 31.5 compared to the overall best lap of the race that we've had so far, which, if we exclude James Pinkerton, would be a 1 minute 30.3. So through McLean's corner, here the aeroplane coming out from East Midlands overhead. Can on occasions make McLean's corner a little bit slippy actually, because right, there's a problem, and that's a spin for Carla Villanueva. She's had a spin coming out of Goddard's corner. The car is on the outside of the circuit. Looks as though it's probably off the racing line-ish, is it? No, it's not particularly there, but I think it's been a spin that's happened quite early on in the corner. It's an unusual place to end up there, so quite exactly how she's got there, I'm not sure. The marshal's on hand to try and assist. And in fact, that's almost on the national circuit, isn't it? So Goddard's is right in front of us. So it is an unusual place to go off. Has she carried too much speed in or had some sort of issue? Because she's skittered a long way off the circuit in a very strange angle from coming around Goddard's. So I don't think I've really ever seen a car on the Grand Prix circuit end up there and at that angle relative to where it probably ought to have been. But it's well and truly off the racing line. For the moment, can just be covered by localised yellow flags, which means that the drivers just have to slow down in that area whilst the marshals are working and the car's still in a dangerous position. Marcus Littlewood now sets his best individual lap of the race last time through, 1 minute 30.130, the race leader, so 12.7 seconds is his lead advantage at this stage from Hamish Forrest, and Hamish Forrest has got over 30 seconds in hand between himself and the next car behind, which would be John McLeod. Right, having got going again, there is the number 33 car of Carla Villanueva, and I think what she's done is opt to do an extra lap of the Donington Park Grand Prix loop, because I think the position that she came to rest, it was easier to bring the car back out on the entrance to the Fogarty S's again and send her back round. So here she comes up towards Goddard's. This was where something happened previously. There were still some yellow flags there that time through, but I think that's because the marshals were still trying to get back to their positions. And Carla Villanueva will now look in her mirrors and see that John McLeod and Rachel Robertson are starting to close in. So up towards Redgate corner. Hopefully she'll stay out of the way and see them coming. So keeps out of harm's way. John McLeod squeezes his way through. Rachel Robertson squeezes her way through. This pair still separated by less than a second. It had grown to just over a second, but now Rachel Robertson is having another little push with 4.5 minutes on the clock remaining. She was 0.3 of a second quicker than John McLeod last time through. So there's still hope as yet that she might be able to grab a podium as far as she's concerned. She finished 5th in the first race of the weekend. She was 5th in the second race of the weekend. Whereas John McLeod has had 2 third places. And he'd like to make it a trio of thirds if he can, but Rachel's certainly got other ideas about that. Through the Fogarty S's, up towards the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. They've been very much inseparable. The only time that they really weren't together was when John McLeod came out of the pits about 4 seconds ahead of Rachel. So she's done a really good job of closing the gap back down again, but is now, I suppose, a little bit frustrated that she just can't thread her way through. Hamish Forrest with traffic to deal with. This will be the car of Alex Fisher that he's going to want to come through and past. So Hamish Forrest, the former kart racer, raced for one of the factory teams for a period of time, did Hamish Forrest. He's going to just wait and get past Alex Fisher. Sensible driving from him. Just wait until the exit of the corner and then squeeze your way through down the straight. Pick up the bit of the toe down the straight. Alex Fisher looks in his mirrors. Hamish Forrest comes through, and that's good driving from Alex Fisher as well. So new to the championship, and just spotting there's a quicker car coming up, and just indicating as well where he wanted him to go. Indicated to the left-hand side, driver's hand coming off the steering wheel, and Hamish Forrest then knew that that's it. He's seen me, I'm clear to go. And in the pit lane, I'm afraid, clearly more problems for Carla Villanueva, number 33 car, which had the problem on the exit of Goddard's, got going again, is now back in. So it does look as though there might be some sort of issue with the number 33 Formula Woman car. Mechanics looking inside the passenger area of it as though it might be some sort of electrical gremlin that's befallen her. 2 minutes to go, so on to the penultimate lap of the race. Should now be our race leader, Marcus Littlewood, I suspect. The number 3 car will be at the moment heading up towards McLean's Corner and Coppice. So I think by the time he gets over the start-finish line, yeah, there's going to be less than a lap time left. So he will be on his penultimate lap, which means that John McLeod and Rachel Robertson now head on to their penultimate lap. So just another 5 miles, just under, to try and sort out who wants to finish in 3rd place, who wants to finish in 4th position. Either way, for Rachel Robertson, this would be her best result of the weekend after 2 5th places in the 2 sprint races. A 4th would be good, but when you can see 3rd, it's a tempting prospect, isn't it? And she's still not that far away, but she's never quite got close in the second part of the race. All of the overtakes and retakes all took place in the first part of the race, unless she's saving something up for the very final lap, because then it gives John McLeod less opportunity to try and retake the place back again. So up towards Coppice Corner, 60 seconds to go. Our race leader is now on to the final lap of the race, so looks as though Marcus Littlewood is going to take not quite maximum points from this, because he hasn't set the fastest lap in every race so far. But other than that, 40 points for the win in yesterday's race, 40 points for the win in the earlier race today, 80 points potentially for the win in this race, because it doubled the points in the longer pit stop races, as has been the format in the Radical UK Cup, or Finecut Radical UK Cup Championship as it's called for this year. And Marcus Littlewood is off to pretty much the perfect start for the year. If all you're doing over the course of a weekend is maybe dropping a point here or there for not getting a pole position or a fastest lap, well, he's had all the pole position points as well, I think, but single fastest lap point that he didn't get in the 2nd sprint race, which took place earlier on today, well, that's not a bad start to a season, is it? Particularly when you are a reigning Radical champion as well, the reigning Radical SR1 champion. So into the braking area for the Melbourne hairpin. He's going to win by 15, 16, 17 seconds, something like that, from Hamish Forrest up towards Goddard's. And it's been relatively trouble-free, not just in this race, but all weekend for Marcus Littlewood, who has shown good dominance and wins round 3 of the Finecut Radical Cup UK Championship here at Donington Park for 2025. 3 out of 3 for him, and if we exclude the fastest lap point, which I'm sure won't go in the general direction of James Pinkerton because he's in the development car, James Littlewood also set his best individual fastest lap on that final lap, 1 minute 30.004, which should net him an extra 2 championship points. Hamish Forrest comes through to finish in 2nd position. Some solid points for him after the disappointment of race number 1 of the weekend. And has Rachel Robertson got anything further she can throw at John McLeod, who goes defensive in towards the Melbourne hairpin on the final lap? Rachel now only has 1 further opportunity, which is either on the brakes into Goddard's or on the run out. And I think John McLeod is going to utilise all of that 15 years of experience of racing these cars to just make sure he's clean coming out of Goddard's, and he will take his third place of the weekend from Rachel Robertson, who finishes in 4th, but that's still her best result of the weekend. I think there'll be a thumbs up between those two because they did have a good old battle. James Pinkerton finishes in 5th place. He did close in on them towards the end, and then await the arrival of the next car over the start finish line, Alex Fisher, who finishes in 6th place. He was the car that picked up a 5-second penalty for track limits. We've already had over the start finish line Natalie Neumann, so I think it's just Andy Lowe to take the checkered flag, who comes through now, and that's all the cars now having completed the race in the Finecut Radical UK Championship. It's 3 out of 3 for Marcus Littlewood, say pretty much, other than maybe 1 single point he didn't pick up for fastest lap in one of the races. That is pretty much a perfect start to his 2025 championship season. Let's confirm then the results for round 3 of the Finecut Radical Cup UK Championship. Marcus Littlewood claims the win by 17 seconds in the end from Hamish Forrest in second place, and it was John McLeod in third, who also picks up the win in the Fangio Trophy once more. Rachel Robertson was fourth, James Pinkerton from the pit lane start fifth, Alex Fisher was sixth ahead of Andy Lowe, who was there in seventh place. The pairing of Flame Rickler and Natalie Neumann were in 8th place, and it was Alexia Barrett and Carla Villanueva that were there in 9th position. Well, that's it from Donington Park and the Finecut Radical Cup UK Championship. We'll be back out at Brands Hatch on the 17th and 18th of May on the Grand Prix circuit there as well. So thanks for joining us this weekend. Hope you've enjoyed it. We'll catch you next time. Cheerio.